Thank you. The following is one of my voiceover demos. If you're a voiceover artist and you would like to advertise one of your demos on my podcast, please send an MP3 to thedrill12, all one word, at gmail.com. That's thedrill12 at gmail.com. Back in a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
I am 74 years old. Life expectancy for men is 76 years. Life expectancy for women is 81 years. I figure if I transition...
Good morning. It's Friday, Police Friday, August the 23rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and the 400 things cops know. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
The king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. and by the powers, where we will, we roam. Yo-ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Now some have died and some are alive, and others sail on the sea with their keys to the cage and the devil to pay. We're laid to fiddler's grave. Yo-ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Yo-ho, all together, hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. The bell has been raised from its watery grave. Do you hear its sepulchral tone? We call to all, pay heed the squall, and turn yourselves toward home. Yo-ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Yo-ho, all together, hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
Thank you. And now, Stewie.
He picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. Let the campaign begin. Kamala Harris has launched her bid for the White House. She's offering a pathway forward, but failed to say how we get there. It was light on substance, light on policy, and she attacked Trump with a series of what are politely called falsehoods. Her speech was well received, however. Democrats are leaving the Chicago convention in a giddy mood. They believe their candidate can win. Trump pushed back quickly. He's not going to cut Social Security or Medicare, and he's not going to enact a national abortion ban. He asks, what is she complaining about? She had 3.5 years and didn't do anything. He says Harris should immediately close the border. Well, he's going to Glendale, Arizona today. He will be at the border. President Biden, he's in California. on a 2-week vacation. To the markets, it looks like a Friday morning summer rally. Remember, this afternoon, Jay Powell hints in veiled language where interest rates are going. It is assumed they're going down, but by how much and when, we don't know yet. The Dow Industrial's up close to 200 points. The Nasdaq is up 180 points. This is how we're starting out. I do not know how we'll close out this afternoon. Interest rates, we have the 10-year Treasury coming in at 3.83%. The 2-year is above 4%, or actually it's right at 4% even. Bitcoin, $61,000 and small change. Oil, $74 per barrel. Gas, that was a gallon of regular, down a cent, is creeping lower, $3.37 for regular, $3.71 for diesel. All right, on the show today, we'll go through the Harris speech for clues to the future. There aren't many because the speech was light on policy. It comes to this. Harris is not likely to give any in-depth interviews. We'll have to wait for the September 10th debate for that. It is Friday, August the 23rd. The debate's 18 days away. Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Stewie. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Trump action.
They don't believe in school choice. They don't believe in parental rights or the safeguarding of children. They don't believe in freedom unless it's the freedom to have an abortion or chemically and surgically castrate children. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said it best in her State of the Union address response. The dividing line in America is no longer right versus left or red versus blue or Republican versus Democrat. The choice we have in November is normal versus crazy. You have one ticket that is America first compared to the other that are globalist. You have one ticket that wants secure borders compared to the other that wants open borders. You have one ticket that knows what a woman is and has vowed to take decisive action in protecting our sex-based rights compared to the other ticket that thinks men can become pregnant and that tampons belong in boys' bathrooms. I see on social media people saying they're voting for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. Well, guess what? I am voting for Donald J. Trump because I am a woman.
And that was swimmer Riley Gaines. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the patriotic short.
5 U.S. soldiers and 2 contractors were wounded in an Iranian-backed attack last night. And this coming as the U.S. is now starting to see Iran prepare for a military response to Israel. Russia has started delivering radars and air defense equipment to Iran as they prepare for a potential war with Israel. This comes after it's been revealed that the Russian military is assisting the Houthis in targeting ships in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, Hezbollah's leader gave a speech today saying their response will be strong and effective and will happen regardless of the consequences. He also said that making Israel wait for their attack is part of the attack, because if you recall, a week ago they promised immediate retaliation within hours, and 7 days later we're still waiting. So the stalling is a tactic, allegedly at least. Also, before his speech, reportedly Israel flew several jets over Beirut and had them break the sound barrier in an effort to intimidate, something he says is pointless and doesn't scare him. You've also got the U.S. assembling a multinational coalition to defend Israel from an Iranian attack, and they've reportedly told Israel don't push it and warned them to think carefully before they respond. And one Western official is saying they're expecting several intense days of exchanging blows before the temperature will go down.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now about 6 minutes of motivation.
What do you do when your battle chooses you? What do you do when something shows up on your doorstep that you did not directly cause, choose, or definitely anticipate.
There's problems that we go through that cause stress, worry, anxiety, and fear, but you might be in the battle of your life. I want to encourage you. It's not about what's happening around you. It's always about what's happening inside of you.
Life is hard sometimes. Easy, it's not an option. It's hard. Keeping your spirits up, getting up every day knowing and feeling that death is watching over you and say, you better sleep with one eye open because I'm waiting on you. It's hard when you're hurting. It's hard. You got bills, you got responsibilities. It's hard. But it's worth fighting. It's worth believing. It's worth giving yourself a chance. It's worth mustering yourself up, standing up inside yourself. It's worth fighting relentlessly, never giving up. You can do it. You can do it.
Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean you have to be afraid. Just because you feel discouraged doesn't mean you have to be discouraged. Just because you have fear doesn't mean fear has to have you.
When you have fear, fear makes you speak in a certain way. When you have fear, but when you have faith, you don't need to count. When you have faith, you don't need to go outside. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many horses. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many armies. When you have faith, you don't need to see how many swords. When you have faith, you don't need to count no shields. When you have faith, you don't need to look at the parameter and see how many against. When you have faith, you just believe and it'll happen.
You got to get to the point where you don't need a car anymore. You don't need a house anymore. You don't need to be pushed by anybody anymore. Your dreams, your wives going to push you. Your spouse is going to push you. Your child is going to push you. The need to get better is going to push you. Because you're closer than you're ever going to be, it's going to push you. You don't need anything to push you. Your goals are going to push you. Your dreams are going to push you. The opportunity of a lifetime that happens in this particular time frame is going to push you. It's going to drive you. It's going to make you better.
You got to tell life, I don't know who you've been dealing with, but you ain't dealt with me. You got to tell bankruptcy. You got to tell divorce. You got to tell sickness. I don't know who you've been dealing with, but you come up against the wrong one this time.
If you are willing to ride, you can start from nothing. When I talk about beast mode now, I'm talking about the ant that's very small, but that can probably lift 100 times his weight. I'm saying that some of you in this room, you might not be a lion yet. Some of you in this room, you might be an ant. You might have small beginnings. You might not have a lot of money. You might not have a lot of resources. You might be the ant, and the ant has very little, but he's determined. He's strong. He has a dream and a goal, and he'll do whatever it takes. Many of you right now, life's got you up against the rope, and you got to do me a favor. Like, you can't give up. You can't give in. Listen to me. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And if life's got you backed up, I need you to start fighting back. When the going get tough, tough get going. When you go through the valley, when you have been knocked down, when you know what it is to be destroyed, when you know what it is to be wiped out by life, no one can take that from you. If you come from a family right now that's broke, use that to your advantage. I use that to my advantage that I was a high school dropout, that I was homeless, that I ate out of trash can. I love dealing with a dude who think because he come from money, he better than me. Let's go. You got money, but do you got that dog? Yeah, you got money, you got privilege, but do you got that dog? There's certain things when you privilege that mama can buy you, but you can't buy grit, and you can't buy grind, and you can't buy resilience, and you can't buy heart, and you can't buy that dog. I got this dog for being homeless. I'm getting paid now because the homelessness didn't break me.
Come on, you need to remember, this is not the first time you cried. This is not the first time you were short of breath. This is not the first time you didn't see a way clear. This is not the first time you were hurt. This is not the first time your heart was broken. This is not the first time you didn't have enough money. This is not the first diagnosis that came up from behind.
Say, I'm going to live to tell the story. This too shall pass. I will remain. I'm not going to quit. Every one of my burdens, there's a blessing on the inside of it. If you don't quit, you will win, baby. Just keep coming back. If you got nothing left to give, just show back up. Half of life, man, is just showing up.
I couldn't give up. Homeless, I still couldn't give up. I'm one class shot, the PhD. I can't give up. Why? Because the value, what it's worth, what I put in. I put in too much. I'm giving too much. I sweat too much. I'm giving up sleep. I've given up friendship. I've given up so much stuff that I had to get back later. Why? Because the value, I put too much in it. What's it worth to you? What does it cost? What price have you paid for it? What has it cost you? And if it costs you something, then you better not quit until you get a harvest. You better not quit till it's fully developed. You better not quit in the midst of the process. I need you to speak victory. I don't care what's going on around you. I need you to speak victory. I need you to talk victory. I don't care what your circumstances are. I don't need you to speak your reality. If you broke, you ain't got to tell the whole world you broke. I need you to speak victory. I need you to say I'm going to graduate when you can't even see it. I need you to say my book will be finished. I'm an author long before it's finished. You have to believe it when you cannot see it. You have to speak it and say it's so that it can become a reality. Because if you can speak it, if you can say it.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Daily Stoic.
Don't make things harder than they need to be. If someone asks you how to write your name, would you bark out each letter? And if they get angry, would you then return the anger? Wouldn't you rather gently spell out each letter for them? So then, remember in life that your duties are the sum of individual acts. Pay attention to each of these as you do your duty. Just methodically complete your task. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6.26. Here's a common scenario. You're working with a frustrating coworker or a difficult boss. They ask you to do something, and because you dislike the messenger, you immediately object. There's this problem or that one, or their request is obnoxious and rude. So you tell them, no, I'm not going to do it. Then they retaliate by not doing something that you had previously asked of them. And so the conflict escalates. Meanwhile, if you could step back and see it objectively, you'd probably see that not everything they're asking for is unreasonable. In fact, some of it is pretty easy to do, or is at least agreeable. And if you did it, it might make the rest of the tasks a bit more tolerable, too. Pretty soon you've done the entire thing. Life and our job is difficult enough. Let's not make it harder by getting emotional about insignificant matters or digging in for battles we don't actually care about. Let's not let emotion get in the way of kathaken, the simple, appropriate actions on the path to virtue.
And that was the Daily Stoic. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
My ability to speak articulately is correlated very directly to my ability to hear. If I hear certain voices, I'm going to start reproducing them. That's the way we learn language. A lot of people in our culture, they are attuned to other voices. The voice I've talked about a lot with you, of subjectivist individualism, the voice of moral relativism. If these are all the voices we ever hear, that's all we're ever going to say. What's the point? We in our culture are often deaf to the voice of God, deaf to this higher voice that speaks a divine spiritual truth, that speaks of eternal moral values, that speaks of the existence and demand and invitation of God.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, most people who oppose socialized medicine do so on the grounds that it is moral and well-intentioned but impractical, i.e. that it is a noble idea which just somehow doesn't work. I do not agree that socialized medicine is moral and well-intentioned but impractical. Of course, it is impractical. It does not work, but I hold that it is impractical because it is immoral. What is morality in this context? The American concept of it is officially stated in the Declaration of Independence. It upholds man's unalienable individual rights. The term rights, note, is a moral, not just a political term. It tells us that a certain course of behavior is right, sanctioned, proper, a prerogative to be respected by others, not interfered with, and that anyone who violates a man's rights is wrong, morally wrong, unsanctioned evil. Now, our only rights, the American viewpoint continues, are the rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. That's all. Why only these? Observe that all legitimate rights have one thing in common. They are rights to action, not to rewards from other people. The American rights impose no obligations on other people, merely the negative obligation to leave you alone. The system guarantees you the chance to work for what you want, not to be given it without effort by somebody else. Your right to happiness at someone else's expense means that they become your rightless serfs, i.e., your slaves. Your right to anything at others' expense means that they become rightless. That is why the U.S. system defines rights as it does, strictly as the rights to action. Under the American system, you have a right to health care if you can pay for it, i.e., if you can earn it by your own action and effort. But nobody has the right to the services of any professional individual or group simply because he wants them and desperately needs them. The very fact that he needs those services so desperately is the proof that he had better respect the freedom, the integrity, and the rights of the people who provide them. As with any good or service that is provided by some specific group of men, if you try to make its possession by all a right, you thereby enslave the providers of that service, wreck the service, and end up depriving the very consumers you are supposed to be helping. To call medical care a right will merely enslave the doctors and thus destroy the quality of medical care in this country, as socialized medicine has done around the world, wherever it has been tried, including Canada. The only hope for the doctors, for their patients, for all of us, is for the doctors to assert a moral principle. To assert their own personal individual rights, their real rights in this issue, their right to their lives, their liberty, their property, their pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence applies to the medical profession too. We must reject the idea that doctors are slaves destined to serve others at the behest of the state, unquote. And I wanted to say that really the issue in terms of cost is one that's easily solved. We solved it back in the 50s when we had means-tested health care. Means-tested health care. Ronald Reagan, when he was president, talked about it. He said that back in the days when he was governor of California, if he broke a leg, he would get charged more because he was wealthier than somebody who was poor. The poor person might get the service for free or a nominal fee, $10, $20, something like that, whereas somebody like Ronald Reagan would pay $1,000, $2,000, well above what he would normally expect to pay because he is wealthy. In Iceland, they do this with traffic tickets. If you are speeding in Iceland and your net worth is over $1 million, your speeding ticket is $10,000, not $300 or $400, because that's just ridiculous. So, if you really want to do something about the cost of health care, means test health care. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the 33 Strategies of War, Chapter 32.
The passive aggression strategy. Any attempt to bend people to your will is a form of aggression. And in a world where political considerations are paramount, the most effective form of aggression is the best hidden one. Aggression behind a compliant, even loving exterior. To follow the passive-aggressive strategy, you must seem to go along with people, offering no resistance. but actually you dominate the situation. You are non-committal, even a little helpless, but that only means that everything revolves around you. Some people may sense what you are up to and get angry. Don't worry. Just make sure you have disguised your aggression enough that you can deny it exists. Do it right, and they will feel guilty for accusing you. Passive aggression is a popular strategy. You must learn how to defend yourself against the vast legions of passive-aggressive warriors who will assail you in your daily life.
And that was the 33 Strategies of War. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you're a Democrat, you should vote Republican and vote for Donald Trump. Why? Because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is. Back in a minute. Thank you. Kamala Harris, or Vice President Harris, has said that she is going to, I believe it was, the quote was day one, she was going to go ahead and create a mechanism whereby we will be able to, where she will go after price gouging. And so what she's talking about, when you ask what is she doing, she's creating either a new regulatory body or taking an existing regulatory body and extending their authority / rights. So maybe the FDA or something. So as I've said in the past, I want to make it clear, by the way, I've said in the past I hate regulation. That's untrue. It's not completely accurate. I like regulation. The question is, who does it? Are we going to have the government regulate, or are we going to have customers regulate? I am pro-customer regulation. If a business is going to use bad business practices, then it is the customers that should regulate that business by simply refusing to do business there. Now, we have in this country, I've been outvoted. I don't think there should be any government regulation. It should all be done by people because, again, the idea that people that work for government are inherently more trustworthy than people that work for businesses is ridiculous on its face. And it never works anyways. The regulators never really regulate. So here's Kamala Harris. She's going to create a new regulatory agency, or she is going to expand the authority or powers of an existing agency. Now, as a true conservative, I say I'll hack off on that. Because remember, there's 3 ways to say no. Say no, then negotiate. Say yes with conditions. So I say yes. I'll go ahead and go for that. You want to go ahead and regulate, or you want to go ahead and regulate, make sure there's no price gauging, is the way she put it. Fine, under one condition. The regulators must be held accountable, meaning that the regulators must be subject to criminal and civil prosecution if they fail in their duties. If they fail to find price gauging and fail to correct it, then they should be subject to criminal and civil prosecution. If she goes ahead and agrees with that and puts it in the law, I will support it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is a little something from Kamala Harris's acceptance speech.
Who is realistic, practical, and has common sense.
So that's what she's describing there is not a liberal or a socialist. She is describing a conservative. And so what she's promising to do is to be a conservative. And this is interesting because, again, you would think that she would want to distance herself from conservatism, to give people a reason to vote for her. Harry Truman once said, when people suggested that he run for office with a more Republican attitude, he said, well, if you give the people the choice between a Republican and a Republican, they're going to vote Republican every time. The same goes here. If she all of a sudden steps up and says, hey, I'm a conservative, then the issue is going to be, who is more conservative, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from the book 400 Things Cops Know, Chapter 4, 19 Things Cops Know About Working with the Public.
Chapter 4, 19 Things Cops Know About Working with the Public. Rachel, we want nothing to do with your laws. Book. Doesn't surprise me. A lot of people I meet are like that. Harrison Ford as Philadelphia Police Detective John Book, witness. 1. If the public screams at you, don't scream back, because if they piss you off, they own you. 2. Once in a while, you'll encounter an undocumented immigrant who has no ID and claims not to know his exact date of birth, which may be true, as some immigrants hail from remote places where certified birth certificates are few and far between. If you arrest such a person, you run their prints and see if anything comes up. If nothing does, you have to put something down on the paperwork for a date of birth. So you just assign them one. The time I did this, I made it in July. The suspect seemed okay with that. July is a good month for birthdays with the favorable weather and all. When I was done, I felt a faint God complex. I have bestowed a date of origin upon you. I have given you life. Go forth and be fruitful. 3. If you respond to a hold-up alarm at a bank with a suspect potentially still inside, you'll tape everything off, and cops will be covering the perimeter with shotguns, awaiting the order to go in. This will not stop citizens from driving up and asking if the bank is closed. One time I told a guy, yeah, it's closed because of a bank robbery that could still be in progress. He then asked if he could just pop in briefly to use the ATM. I have to get money out, he explained, as if this ATM possessed magical money-making properties that the dozens of other ATMs at nearby unrobbed banks did not. 4. Neighbor trouble is a typical police call for service. These can be legitimate assignments where someone has broken the law and you can help restore a little civic order. But what you'll usually get are complicated squabbles that come complete with deep backstories, heroes and villains, and a litany of mutual complaints dating back to when mastodons roamed the earth. 2 neighbors will approach you at once. Both have been grievously wronged. The first one will say something like, yes, officer, 3 weeks ago my car got keyed and I think it was the neighbor, and then a few days ago he called me stupid, and now his kids constantly skateboard past my house. The second will have something for you like, this man's tree branch hangs a foot over our mutual property line, and yesterday I found my tomato plants partially trampled, and... Both neighbors want restorative justice, and they want it now, and they want you to give it to them. These complaints tend to boil down to something so trivial and stem from such unreasonable people whose troubles are so largely self-inflicted that it makes you want to grind your teeth. On these calls, you're essentially a glorified babysitter, dealing with people who both have an utter inability to coexist with each other and fail to grasp what the police are really for. They are, as my former partner Steve Pinchard liked to point out, just children in adults' bodies. As a cop, you do what you can for them. Sometimes you refer both parties to a neighborhood mediation clinic or to civil court. But what else is there to do? Most of these people call because they think their neighbors are jerks, but it's not against the law to be a jerk.
The police are not part of a Miss Manners strike force responding with corrective action and colorful pamphlets when people are rude. You can't make someone be a good neighbor. Maybe cops should be thankful for these folks. There's certainly job security for law enforcement because they never stop calling. But when an armed robbery in progress comes over the radio and you're 40 blocks away trying to referee an intricate dog poop dispute, you tend to get a little cranky. The dumbest neighbor call I've ever gone to involved a guy who called the police to report his neighbor had recently given him a dirty look. Oh boy. Thank God I have extensive police training because I will be calling on all of it to fully explore the solution to this significant event. Could you describe the look, sir? Was the brow fully furrowed? Was it accompanied by clenched teeth? So essentially he was squinting at you. Is it possible the sun was just in his eyes? No? You say it was overcast at the time? Okay, I just checked weather.com and I have confirmation of overcast during the time frame in question. Good, takes that defense right off the table for the suspect. 5. It's easier said than done, but your mood shouldn't affect your job performance. Maybe you're bringing baggage to work. You've got problems at home with your wife and kids. Money woes, health concerns. You worked until 6 in the morning, had to be up for court at 9, and man, forget about protecting and serving. You just want to take a nap. But none of that matters once you suit up. The public doesn't care about your problems. They shouldn't have to. Once you put on the uniform, you have to make like everything is fine. As one police academy instructor once told me, this is called the show. You have to put on the show. The show is on. 6. Certain members of the public will downright loathe you. This may be because of their contact with cops who have legitimately done them wrong. Perhaps it was an offense stemming from corruption, such as an officer pocketing a bottle of the homeowner's OxyContin at a burglary scene. Or it could be an offense of ignorance, like the 2 patrol officers sitting in the front of the car casually chatting about local sports, while the traumatized sexual assault victim sits in back waiting to be interviewed by a detective. But most people who hate the police are criminals, and they hate you because you arrest them. Because you tell them they can't have their way. They, in turn, teach their children to hate you, and so it goes through the generations. Others blame you for not doing enough to prevent crime, although they never seem to hold the fire department culpable for not doing enough to prevent fires. But the typical person who claims to hate the police seems, more often than not, to hail from a certain socio-cultural group. A group populated by the type of people you find as guests on whatever garish daytime talk show is in fashion. Those high on drama and lawlessness, and low on reason and etiquette. They live in the kinds of communities where when you return to your squad car, you find Cops 187 traced on it in road salt. 187 is the California Penal Code for homicide. Even the most clever PR efforts won't win them over, because it's not how well you do your job that's the problem. For them, it's the system that's the problem. It's always working against their interests, and you're the most visible embodiment of that system. In their minds, you aren't out there for them, you're out there to guard the status quo. The irony, of course, is that the people who live in the kinds of neighborhoods that need you the most also hate you the most. You try to mend fences with these types when possible, because citizen police cooperation is essential. When you lose sight of the felony suspect, the bystander can either point you in the right direction or purposely point you in the wrong, depending on how their last interaction with the cops went. But some fences don't mend, and sometimes you don't even try. When people tell you they hate the police, you may respond that you aren't too wild about them either. But you will run into citizens who will thank you for the services you render. Or you'll see some pedestrian raise a hand in go-get-em solidarity as you whip past in pursuit of a suspect vehicle. Or some folks, frustrated at the direction their neighborhood has taken, will watch you take drug suspects out of an apartment in handcuffs and say, "Good job. Get rid of those crackheads." It's nice to get that feedback. The thank yous mean a lot. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that you do have some people rooting for you out there. 7. There is a notable figure in contemporary law enforcement lore called the person who won't shut up. TPWWSU is typically drunk and unreasonable and holds all the cards. He or she will be as profane and disruptive as she wants, for as long as she wants. There is no police remedy for this affliction, no antidote. They don't issue muzzles to deploy on the loud and disorderly. You just hope they lose their voice or develop a nasty cough. Now, if TPWWSU ends up going to the hospital, the medical fix is the drug Haldol. 1 dose and TPWWSU tends to chill out immediately. Most cops would endorse Haldol for free. 8. The cavernous depths of mental illness you encounter in this business will leave you in awe. You'll talk to a man who collects his own feces in jars because he thinks they're valuable, like money. You'll try to help a woman who is in pain, she insists, because her dead adult son is living inside her. You'll arrest a bipolar diabetic, his feet scaly and oozing pus, who speaks in a non-stop stream of consciousness with his invisible friend Peter, who insists that you watch out for the mustard gas. You'll be sent to an assignment where a woman is in such a frenzy to end her own life that she swallows 90 pills, downs 2 bottles of cough medicine, slashes her own wrists, and then puts a bag over her head in an attempt to suffocate herself. Many of these tortured souls defy standard solutions to mental health problems. They are lost in their own tangled minds. Maybe there are medications that can help them, but they don't take them. Or they just take them on Tuesdays. All of them need more than a pill. They need lunch, someone not crazy to talk to, working heat, an apartment free of bugs. Many are so well known they go by just one name, like Pele. If someone knows how to fix them, they are wiser than you are. I tend to get contemplative around the severely mentally ill. I try to articulate something meaningful about their condition, some illuminating truth regarding the bridge between reason and sanity. But in the end, all I can really come up with is that it's nice not to be them. Among the mentally disturbed stands out one legendary woman who is fairly normal, except for her penchant of collecting dead rats. A patrol cop was talking to her, trying to figure out a way to help, and she responded by flicking one of the rat carcasses his way. It hit him right in the teeth and left a stain. 9. Be careful not to talk down to suspects, especially in front of their loved ones. Maybe some guy has just been laid off from work and he's trying to figure out how he and his family are going to make it. That man is clinging to the only thing he has left, his self-respect. And now you're trying to take it from him by belittling him in his own house in front of his wife and kids. That's not right. Show some respect. Maybe you'll get some in return. 10. If you come across a recently amputated limb and are hoping it can be reunited with its owner, you want to keep that appendage cool but dry. If you put it directly on ice, the tissue will immediately start dying and the chances of it being successfully reattached will plummet. 11. If you encounter kids selling lemonade or raffle tickets for their school or sports team, you shall buy some. And if you have no cash on you, you shall go to an ATM and procure some. There are no exceptions to this rule. Here is another rule to which there are no exceptions. If a citizen asks you for directions and you are not on a priority assignment, you shall stop what you are doing and assist them. This is what solid community policing requires, being helpful and polite to those with questions. This includes when you are standing at a fixed post at the intersection of Powell and Market, and the fourth person in a row looks at their map, looks at you, looks at their map, looks at you, and then tentatively approaches you and asks you where Powell and Market is. Helpful and polite, every single time. 12. People make formal complaints against the police all the time. In fact, if you never get any complaints as a cop, it probably means you don't leave the station much. People can complain about anything. This cop was rude to me. That officer pulled me over for no reason. Those cops didn't believe my story and didn't arrest whom I wanted them to arrest. All of these complaints have to be investigated. That's why you're thankful if your department has a strong union, because it can help you navigate the complaint process. But many of the people who make complaints against cops have long and distinguished rap sheets or are just plain batty. Like the woman who once called the lieutenant to complain about my aura. But while many citizen complaints are baseless time wasters, some of them are spot on. These substantiated grievances often result from a common weakness among law enforcement. We aren't very good at explaining ourselves. The archetypal case may go something like this. A report of an armed robbery comes out. Officers stop a couple of teenagers who match the suspect description. The cops shout at the teens to show their hands, prone them out at gunpoint, handcuff them, pat them down for weapons, and run them all for warrants. During the subsequent investigation, maybe some other cops catch the actual culprits a few blocks away, or the victim takes a look at the handcuffed teens and says, nope, it wasn't them. The upshot is that these guys had nothing to do with the robbery. So the detaining officers let the kids go and tell them to get the fuck out of there. All right, let's break this thing down. First off, you have the initial detention of the teens matching the suspect description, accompanied by plenty of sound and fury, shouted commands, and guns and handcuffs out. Is that legitimate? Absolutely. It's police work 101. Maybe these guys are your suspects, maybe not. But no one gets the benefit of the doubt, not yet. Not until you know more. Then there's the releasing of the teens with a brusque, get the fuck out of here, without telling them why they were stopped in the first place. Well, now we have problems. This kind of police response is a natural byproduct of some officers' mentality that even if these kids didn't do this crime, they did another one, especially if some of them have criminal records. So you're not going to get all weepy about having put their faces in the dirt and leveled a shotgun at their head. They don't deserve an explanation. Screw them. And this is exactly where the complaints roll in, especially when you consider how that 17-year-old's parents may feel when their teenager comes home and describes his recent and eventful encounter with local law enforcement. At the bare minimum, you have to uncuff those kids, dust them off, make sure they're all right, explain exactly why it was that you detained them, and apologize for the misunderstanding. You're not apologizing because you're in the wrong. You're apologizing because being treated like John Dillinger, if only for a few minutes, isn't any fun. You're apologizing because it's stressful to have a gun pointed at you. You're apologizing because you deprived them of their liberty for a little while, which is a pretty big deal, and it should be treated as such. Now, if the crew you stopped happened to be hardened felons and probably have been robbing folks, but just didn't pull this particular job, hopefully you'll get them the next go-round. Until then, you gotta be nice. It's nice to be nice. If nothing else, it probably keeps your blood pressure down. 13. The fear of retaliation weighs heavily on the minds of crime victims and witnesses. If a citizen reports an offense where there's a known suspect, she may get all her house windows broken out or a baseball bat to the face in an alley for her trouble. She works hard for her things and someone breaks them or breaks her. She has to miss work and shell out money she may not have to repair her damaged property or broken bones. Now she has to live in fear. Even if the criminals get arrested for their actions, they won't miss work themselves because they probably don't have jobs. The deck is stacked in their favor.
Thank you. This is...
For this reason, many calls to the police are anonymous. No police to caller's door, the dispatcher advises you. It's hard to blame folks. Restraining orders can have some effectiveness, and there are times when you make the caller confidential in the police report. But a suspect has the right to face their accuser in open court, so at some point that accuser must be named. It's a problem with no easy solution other than to make extra passes by witnesses' homes while on patrol, and to make it clear to suspects that you'll come down on them Old Testament style if they attempt retaliation. 14. Some people obey the law because they feel it is ethical to do so. Others need consequences to stay in line, like being found out and shamed, or going to jail and losing money, employment, or a spouse. Such consequences keep many of us from knocking off banks and running rum. But a certain segment of the population is utterly immune to these hooks. Members of this group are typically homeless or close to it, and often mentally ill. This group boasts those who have literally been arrested hundreds of times, often for nuisance violations like public drinking and disorderly conduct, or for petty theft. They do not fear arrest or jail. Why would they? There's nowhere they have to be tomorrow. An arrest means a place to lay their head and regular meals, and besides, their friends are probably there. There's no magic wand to get this group to abide the law. It's like dealing with a prison lifer in solitary who stabs a prison guard in a state with no death penalty. He's already in jail for the rest of his days. You've got no leverage. What are you going to do to him? Take the mayo off his sandwiches? Make him sleep on a bumpier mattress? 15. You run into quite a few pack rat houses on this job. Christmas ornaments still adorn the walls, even in July, and boxes and crates filled with newspapers from the last 3 decades are stacked to the ceiling, with narrow, twisting paths carved out of the clutter to allow travel from one room to the next. There are often curios in such homes, like the fish clock that intermittently sings Bass to the Bone. There are knickknacks and model airplanes and wood carvings of ducks and fly paper. There is always fly paper in houses like this. Cleaning is done infrequently. If any staffers from Good Housekeeping ever came through the door, they'd immediately implode. 16. There are good Samaritans out there who will render aid to those in need, and at times do so at great risk to themselves. You've seen them at work, and you greatly appreciate them. But as a cop, it's more common for you to see their precise opposites. I once took a stabbing call in a bar where a man was flat on his back on the floor in a growing red pool. Jagged smiles had been carved into his face from cheek to forehead, and blood pumped from his wounds. He was surrounded by 6 gawkers, none of whom were trying to assist him. A bar employee was standing over the victim, swabbing around him with a mop and looking down at him as if to say, "Hey, whenever you're done spurting jugular blood, pal, I can make some headway with this mess." It was such a surreal image, this barback with mop and bucket standing over a dying man, that at first I couldn't process it. There should be a word to describe people like that. Maybe the word already exists. Maybe it is asshole. 17. As a cop, you will be called out to monitor demonstrations, especially in a protest-happy city like San Francisco. Many of these demonstrators will be even-minded people who are passionate about a cause. They're out there taking a stand, and in this day and age of general indifference and addictive diversions like PlayStation, you're all for it. But these folks are soon drowned out by the louder fringe dwellers who treat busy intersections like their personal playground, and who will call you a Nazi fascist pig for no particular reason other than that you're in uniform and close by. The conspiracy theorists who wear t-shirts that say "Occupy Everything" will demand to know if you work for Halliburton or Bank of America. They'll loudly chant, "Fuck the police." At least one of them, usually some kid in a headband and skinny jeans whose idea of tough is probably overcoming shin splints, will get in your face and tell you he hopes you get shot. They'll call you perpetrators of systematic violence and accuse you of allowing humanity to be ravaged in the name of economics. Okay, so they don't like the current system. Got it. But you always wonder what they're proposing in its place. Would they rather there be no police at all? What an interesting society that would be. If a law enforcement-free culture does become the norm, you're going to visit all of their homes and ring their doorbells, and when they answer, you're going to punch them square in the nose. You won't have to worry because there will be no police. There will be no consequences for your actions. Some protesters seek to make their arrests as labor-intensive and cumbersome as possible. They'll lock arms with each other and make their bodies dead weight. Or they shriek dramatically when the police try to put handcuffs on as if they've just been zapped by a cattle prod in order to try and manufacture the appearance of police brutality. All in all, these people greatly annoy you, but you try not to sweat them too much. Being as ignorant as they are must be its own special kind of hell. 18. When people call the police and you respond, they sometimes show up at the door in interesting garb and demonstrating various levels of hospitality. Sometimes they are not wearing pants, or the person at the door is a 350-pound woman squeezed into a leopard print dominatrix outfit. Or there's hardcore porn loudly playing in the background. One may think citizens would adopt some standard of decorum when they know the police are coming. But hey, it's their house. They can open the door in a Gibbons suit, and you still have to render police services with due diligence. 19. Cops aren't always the most compassionate souls around, even when dealing with legitimate crime victims. This job tends to hammer the compassion right out of you. But it's always good to say something like, "I'm sorry this happened to you," or "You seem like a strong person, I think you'll get through this." Because while it may be the 11th violent assault call you've taken that week, it may well be the victim's first ever. So say something kind. Anything. It takes only about 3 seconds. Then you can go back to being cynical and flinty.
And that was Chapter 4, 400 Things Cops Know, Street Smart Lessons from a Veteran Patrolman by Adam Clentinga. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.